happened in Purcellville, Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
is what we're really digging into
Now,
today.
we're looking at the whole roller coaster surrounding the Purcellville Police Department, the PPD.
Exactly. Our mission here is to sort of unpack the sequence of events. Why did they first decide to disband the force? What was the community reaction like? Because it was intense.
Mm-hmm.
And then how did it all get reversed? We've been looking at, news reports, town council meeting summaries, trying to piece it all together.
And pull out the key takeaways. It seems like a local story, but it touches on bigger things, right? Community, governance.
Definitely. Governance, law enforcement, public trust, all that stuff.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, the initial shock. This 4-2 vote by the town council to actually disband the PPD.
That's right. It came pretty suddenly for many residents.
And what were the official reasons given for such a drastic move?
Well, the main things cited were financial concerns and also operational inefficiencies within the department.
Okay.
Councilmember Susan Khalil, she pointed specifically to things like high officer turnover rates, people leaving the force,
Right, that's often a sign of trouble.
and also instances where apparently the town didn't have adequate police coverage. So the plan they voted on was to start phasing out the PPD from July 1st.
And the idea was the county sheriff would just take over the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office, LCSO.
That was the plan, yeah.
Hmm.
Reliance on the LCSO.
But didn't the sheriff have something to say about that? It wasn't quite that simple, was it?
Not at all. That was the next big twist. Sheriff Mike Chapman, he came out pretty quickly with a statement,
Saying what?
basically saying that his office hadn't actually been consulted before the vote happened, which is, well, surprising.
Yeah, you'd think that's step one.
Right. And more than that, he asserted that the town council doesn't actually have the jurisdiction, the authority to impose conditions on his office, the LCSO.
Ah, so they couldn't just say, okay, sheriff, you're taking over on our terms.
Precisely. It immediately threw the whole feasibility into question. Like, how is this transition supposed to work if the other side wasn't even properly looped in?
Okay, so the council votes, the sheriff pushes back. What about the people actually living in Purcellville? How did they react?
Oh, the reaction was, say, significant. Huge public outcry.
I can imagine.
Town hall meetings were apparently jammed, packed. People couldn't even get in standing outside.
Wow. And what were they saying? What were the main worries?
Overwhelmingly, it was about safety. People were worried about slower response times if they only had the county sheriff covering the area.
Makes sense. A dedicated town force probably feels closer, more responsive.
Exactly. And they talked about losing that community-oriented policing feel. They really valued their local PPD, felt it was like part of why Purcellville is seen as such a safe town.
So they were making a strong case for keeping it.
A very strong case.
Yeah.
It wasn't just abstract. They felt the PPD played a direct role in their quality of life and safety.
And did that actually work? Did the council listen?
It seems it did. That intense public pressure, it clearly had an impact because what happened next was another council meeting
And
and a dramatic reversal. They voted again. This time, 5 council members voted to fully fund the PPD.
wow. Okay, so a complete 180.
A complete 180. They allocated, I think it was $3.2 million for the next fiscal year to keep the department running.
That's a pretty powerful demonstration of community engagement actually changing things.
It really is. It shows that, when people show up and speak out, local government can, and sometimes does, listen.
Okay, but the story doesn't quite end there, does it? There's another layer involving the vice mayor, Carl Nett.
Right. This adds, well, a significant complication. Vice Mayor Carl Bennett. He's not just any council member in this story.
Why is that?
Because he used to be a Purcellville police officer himself. He had direct history with the PPD.
Oh, interesting.
And here's the really critical part. He had been terminated from the PPD not long before all this happened.
Terminated? For what?
There were accusations of misconduct, things like misuse of sick leave, and also some inappropriate communication with a consultant who was actually assessing the police department's operations at the time.
Okay, wait. So he gets fired from the police department,
Uh-huh.
and then shortly after, as vice mayor, he votes to disband that same department.
That's the sequence of events, yes.
Yes.
He was one of the 4 initial votes to disband.
That timing looks pretty bad, doesn't it?
It certainly raised a lot of questions and concerns within the community. People were worried about a potential conflict of interest, obviously.
Yeah, potential retaliation.
That was the word being used, yeah, retaliation. And it got serious enough that the Virginia State Police actually launched a criminal investigation into his actions.
A criminal investigation
Yeah.
into the vice mayor.
Yes. And because of that investigation, he's now been removed or recused from all town council matters that involve the police department.
Okay, that's a major development. So, beyond this specific issue with the vice mayor, let's circle back to the reasons why disbandment was even on the table. You mentioned finances and operations.
Right. Those are the initial justifications presented before the vice mayor issue became so prominent.
So, financially, what was the argument?
Well, the town, like many municipalities, faces budget challenges. There was talk about high utility rates being a pressure point. Mayor Christopher Bertol, he argued that disbanding the PPD could save the town potentially over $3 million.
That's a significant chunk of change for a small town budget.
Absolutely. And the idea was that money could then be used to maybe ease those other financial pressures.
But there were counter arguments, right? Even on the financial side. Besides the sheriff saying, hold on.
Yeah, questions were raised about the practicalities, like could they really make that transition to the LCSO smoothly and finalize the town budget by the July 1st deadline? It seemed rushed.
And operationally. What were the specific problems within the PPD itself that were mentioned?
The big one seemed to be staffing. They were apparently quite short-staffed. Something like only 16 officers active out of 21 approved positions.
That's a pretty big gap.
It is. And coupled with that high turnover rate we mentioned earlier, well, it paints a picture of a department potentially struggling to maintain consistent service levels.
So you can see how those operational struggles might have sort of fed into the financial argument for disbandment. Like, if it's struggling anyway, maybe this is a solution.
Exactly. It seems those internal challenges made the drastic option of handing it over to the county seem perhaps more plausible or even necessary to some council members, at least initially, even though it was clearly controversial.
So fast forward back to the present. The PPD is funded. The reversal happened. Where does that leave Purcellville now? What's next?
Well, look, the community got what it seemed to want, keeping its local police force. That's a win for them, clearly.
But the problems don't just vanish, right?
No, absolutely not. The town council now has the job of actually addressing those underlying issues within the PPD. The staffing, the retention, officer morale, those things need serious attention.
And the relationship with the sheriff's office.
That too.
Yeah.
They need to figure out how to work together better, improve communication. Because even with a local force, county resources are often needed. Collaboration is key.
And the whole vice mayor situation must cast a shadow, too, over trust and governance.
Definitely. It underscores the need for, ethical conduct, transparency, and decision-making, making sure things are done for the right reasons. This whole saga is really a lesson in how vital community engagement is, but also accountability.
So if we pull it all together, it's this story of a small town facing a really fundamental question about its police force.
Yeah, driven by financial pressures, operational worries, leading to this really controversial decision.
Then this huge wave of public pushback based on safety, community feel,
Which forces a dramatic reversal, showing citizen power.
but all tangled up with these serious allegations of misconduct against a key official. It's quite a mix.
It really is. And it makes you think about all the different viewpoints, doesn't it? The council trying to balance the books, the residents worried about safety,
The sheriff dealing with the practical realities.
and the ethical questions hanging over the whole thing. It's not simple.
Absolutely. And maybe that's the final thought for everyone listening. What does this whole situation in Purcellville really tell us about that balance of power in our own local towns and cities between the people who govern and the people who live there?
Yeah, how much does public opinion really shape these critical decisions? And what are those other factors maybe hidden beneath the surface that can influence things in our own communities?
Definitely something to chew on. It shows local politics can be just as complex and dramatic as anything else.